It's time for the CGC population count video. This week we're covering 1988, which has a large number of graded comic books. 7 of the top 21 all-time graded comic books on the list are from 1988. We also have some interesting independents and a DC book with a very interesting story behind it and a recent big jump in the population count. We'll also talk about some movie properties, including 2 books that star the same, that had movies starring the same actor, and another 2 books based on movies directed by an Oscar-winning director. All this coming up on this episode from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out the description of this video for links to eBay store, whatnot, email, Instagram. So it's 1988. We have been doing the CGC Census Count / Population Report for now. This would be 54 weeks. We've been doing it for over a year. We started in pre-1934, and now we're up to 1988. So we have, 37 years to go? So there were a lot of books that are very high on the all-time list. We have the all-time record holder on this list. As I said in the intro, 7 of the top 21. So we're going to go through the top 10. We're going to count down the top 10 books overall. We're going to go through the top 10 books for both Marvel and DC, independent publishers, their top books, and other books of note. So there's a lot to cover on this video. This is like my notes are, quite lengthy because a lot of movie properties and TV properties either were inspired the books were based on TV or movie, or they became movies. So we're going to get started at number 10 on our list. And it's neither Marvel nor DC. We start out with an independent. It is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures number 1. This is the miniseries. There was a 3-issue miniseries, and then it was followed by an ongoing series. This is from Archie Productions. Or Archie Publications, I should say. So it's not an Archie book that's the top Archie book. Archie at this time is starting to take on other properties. So this 3-issue miniseries was based on the 1987 animated series. It basically adapts the first 5 episodes of the animated series into comic books, and it is the first appearance of Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady. Now, Eastman and Laird did the cover, but the interior story and art is by Michael Dooney. So you have someone, this is not the Mirage. This is aimed at kids. Anytime you see adventures, Batman adventures, etc., it's going to be usually based on a animated cartoon, and it's usually more aimed at kids. This checks in at a total of 3,251 copies on the census. The number 9 book on the list is X Factor number 24. This is the issue in which we get Angel becoming Archangel. We have the origin of Apocalypse, and basically Angel becomes one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, Archangel. Louise Simonson did the story. Her husband Walt did the art with Bob Wyacek, and Walt also did the cover. A total of 4,666. Archangel was a big part of that X-Men animated series in the 90s, so we're getting a lot of confluence of popular culture, movies, TV, adaptations, either, in the Marvel DC realm or outside of it. Again, 4,666 copies. Our number 8 book is a classic cover. It's from DC. This is Batman number 423 with this classic Todd McFarlane cover. There were 3 printings of this book, and you can tell the difference in the printings by looking at the box. The first printing also included the newsstand. There was no second or third printing of the newsstand, so that would have a barcode. This one has the Batman logo, and there were different, I think there was wording in the other 2. They're each unique, but this is all about the Todd McFarlane cover. Completely. The story inside is by Jim Starlin with art by Dave Cockrum and Mike DiCarlo. It's a pretty standard Batman story. There's no key significance to it. It is all about the cover. It's been much homaged. And it's amazing that it's this far down on the list. 4,998 copies. At number 7 on the list, and you can see where we're going to be going. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 301. Basically, the early McFarlane on Spider-Man. Michelini did the story. McFarlane did the art and the cover. The one thing about this book is it was tough for me. I didn't get this in 9.8. It's hard to get in a 9.8. These at this point, Marvel's back covers were usually like completely black, so they pick up ticks like nobody's business. And it's also hard with the front cover to keep a very white cover clean. This comes in at 6,459 copies on the list on the population report. Staying in the same vein, number 6 on the list is Amazing Spider-Man 299. We have a Venom cameo. This is Todd McFarlane here. It includes Chance. Nobody cares about that aspect of it. But this, as I said, the McFarlane stuff, very collectible. 9,537 copies on the census. The number 5 book on the list is Amazing Spider-Man 298. This is the first time that Todd McFarlane worked on Amazing Spider-Man. It's the first appearance of Eddie Brock in cameo, if you don't include that, retconned cameo in, Web Spider-Man 16. Very similar to 299, though, the largely white cover. This has 10,222 copies on the census. The number 4 book on the list is Batman, The Killing Joke. No number. This is by Alan Moore and Brian Boland, and this is a classic story. There ended up being, I believe, 9 printings of this. So this is the story in which they're letting the Joker go full evil right around this time, right? He's no more just like squirting flowers and, that kind of stuff. He is like really awful. And in this one, he shoots Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, in the spine and cripples her. Does other stuff to her that we don't need to mention here. But this has been adapted into an animated movie, and really it set the tone for the Batman stories for a long time and reinvented the character of Barbara Gordon. She had to reinvent herself, really, as Oracle. But just a classic story. And again, Alan Moore doing the deconstruction, kind of hinting at a Joker origin without talking about it, without, outlining a specific Joker origin. This has 11,380 copies on the census, and that's just the first print. The number 3 book on the list is Incredible Hulk 340, this classic Todd McFarlane cover. We're seeing a lot of McFarlane here. He was in his heyday. He had really, matured. He did his early work on Coyote and then cut his teeth doing a lot of Infinity Inc. run, which I really enjoyed over at DC. I was a fan of that title, and his work was unique. But he really, I think, by this point in time, by 1988, he had really refined his artwork and was becoming the most popular artist in comics by far. He does do the interior artwork and the stories by Peter David. Of course, again, a much homaged cover. It was homaged in the Deadpool Wolverine film. And really, in 1988, you're getting to the point where a lot of 80s kids, collectors, they're now full-grown adults with some disposable income, and they're going after these books that were really seminal as them as kids, whether they be like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, more kids books, and even things like G.I. Joe and Masters of the Universe, but also these classic storylines and classic covers. This one has 12,580 copies on the census. The number 2 book on the list is actually not McFarlane. It is Wolverine number 1, the ongoing series. Chris Claremont did the story. John Buscema did the art and the cover. This is the first Wolverine is patched. John Byrne did the back cover. There's a poster on the back cover, which makes it a little bit difficult because it's half black, half white background. So you get color rub one way or another often on those. So the Wolverine series, he finally got his own series here in 1988. It ran for 189 issues, and then he's gotten subsequent series ever since. He's one of the 2 most popular characters at Marvel. So this is a highly collectible book. It has 20,150 copies in the census. Number one, can you guess what it is? We've danced around it earlier in the top 10, and obviously it is Amazing Spider-Man 300, the first full appearance of Venom, the anniversary issue. This is one of probably the most sought after book of the Copper Age. Any Spider-Man collector wants this. And even though there are plenty of them out there, the demand is still ridiculously high. And a little bit higher and high grade. Now, this is one thing about this book that's interesting. It's common in terms of grading for books to have common production defects that won't necessarily affect your grade. So the Spider-Man 300, on the right edge towards the top, you often get a very rough cut. But you can. I got a 9.8 with a rough cut. It's considered a production defect, so it doesn't take away from the grade. There are books though that don't have that, so that might command a little bit more of a premium. But again, on this one, I don't really talk about values of the book so much because that's not what these videos are about. Now, this is nothing's going to beat this record. This is the all-time most submitted book to CGC. There are, in terms of blue labels, 31,928 copies. In addition, there are another 6,081 signature series. And McFarlane he's a rather prolific signer of his books. So, again, demand is high. Even though the supply is high, it's still an incredibly pricey book and really one that most collectors want. So, let's go outside the top 10. Let's go to number 11 on the list, which is the third DC book. This is Batman number 428. This is the third part of the Death in the Family storyline where Joker kills Robin. He was really busy in 1988, crippling Batgirl, killing Jason Todd. Jim Starlin did the story. Jim Aparo did the art. Mike Mignola did the cover. So what was interesting was, and DC did the other half of the story, released it within the last year, is that there was a telephone number that you could call. It was a 900 number that you could call back in the day and vote for whether or not you wanted Robin to survive the attack by the Joker or be killed by the Joker. More people voted to kill him because Jason Todd was a little bit annoying, right? He was the second Robin after Dick Grayson. So he came back. And you see on the cover, there's that thing is he's been attacked by the Joker. But how bad is it? Now Robin lies in rubble, still silent, shattered. Can he possibly be alive? No. Lazarus Pit. Spoiler. This one has a total of 3,033 copies on the census. The eighth book from Marvel is Wolverine number 2. Only 2 issues of Wolverine came out in 1988. Came out in November of that year. Claremont Buscema. The back cover is a pinup by Bill Sienkiewicz. This has a total of 2,438. The 9th Marvel book on the list is Punisher War Journal number 1 by Carl Potts, with Carl Potts and Jim Lee art. It retells the origin of the Punisher. This title ran for 80 issues. And again, the Punisher had just gotten his own ongoing series after having the limited series. He was incredibly popular. The following year, in 1989, there would be a film. Wasn't released theatrically in the U.S. It was direct-to-video starring Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher. And there have been other iterations of the Punisher on screen since. There are a total of 2,134 copies on the census. Number 14, which is our 10th Marvel book on the list, is Amazing Spider-Man 306. Classic cover by Todd McFarlane, homaging Action Comics number 1. Again, McFarlane did the run from 298 to 323, and then he came back for 328. So all of these are desirable to some degree, but this, having that homage, pushes it ahead of all the other non-keys. This clocks in with 2,129 copies on the population report. The 4th DC book on the list is Hellblazer number 1 by Jamie Delano and John Ridgway with a Dave McKean cover. This is where John Constantine gets his own book out of the Swamp Thing. Had premiered in Saga the Swamp Thing 37 in full. This title ran for 300 issues. Of course, We saw him, Keanu Reeves portray him in the Constantine film, Matt Ryan portraying him in a TV series and on Legends of Tomorrow. And they had to, because I think there's, they were going to use him elsewhere. They used his, they gender swapped him in the Sandman TV series for Joanna Conway. Constantine, I should say. This comes in with 1,858. The one thing I should mention is, now this predates Vertigo. Vertigo is not a thing yet. We'll get to that soon. We talked in the last week about the influence of manga and anime. And here's another example. This is the top book from the Epic imprint of Marvel. This is Akira #1. This is based on a Japanese cyberpunk post-apocalyptic manga, which originally came out in 1982 in Japan in Young Magazine. Katsuhiro Otomo is the creator of this. Now, in Marvel, it ran for 38 issues. And basically, they were reprinting the stories from Japan in English to coincide with the release of the film, the anime that came out in 1988. These are square-bound, tough to find in grade. And the later issues also are fairly expensive because of the difficulty finding grade. This comes in with 1,734 copies on the Pop Report. The next book is the 5th DC book on the list, and it is Batman number 426. This is Death in the Family Part 1. Starlin Aparo Magnola cover. We already kind of covered the backstory here. 1,602 copies on the Census. The next book on the list is a top book from Dark Horse Comics, and it is Aliens #1 of a 6-issue limited series. So this was based on Mark Verheiden did the story. Mark Nelson did the cover and art. It is a black and white comic in the interior. It's based on not the original 1979 film Alien. It's based on the 1986 film Aliens, directed by James Cameron. Aliens, of course, a franchise that's still going strong. A recent TV series that came out. It's been in comics, for the last 37 years. So they're, it's pretty prominent in popular culture and in comic books. 1,566 copies. The 6th DC book is Batman 427. This is the second part of the Death in the Family storyline. One of the interesting things about this is that I guess they were coming out twice a month at this point in time. Or maybe they all came out the same month. They're all December 88. Maybe every 2 weeks, and maybe there were 3 Wednesdays in December. I'm not sure. But this clocks in with a total of 1,457 copies. Now, we talked about Amazing Spider-Man 306 and homage to Action Comics #1. The 7th DC book on the list is Action Comics #1, the 1988 reprint. This reprints, I believe it's just the Superman story, which is true of the early reprints, except for the tabloid or treasury-sized famous first editions. This, if you can't get the original, and there's less than 100 of those, there are 1,378 copies of this Blue Label on the Population Report. The 8th DC book on the list is V for Vendetta #1 by Alan Moore and Dave Lloyd. This is the American adaptation or the American reprint of the story that was in the Warrior magazine in the UK, running from 1982 to 1985. DC did this 12-issue miniseries. In 2005, there was a film made of this, directed by James McTeague, with a screenplay by the Wachowskis, starring Natalie Portman, Hugo Weaving, and John Hurt. This clocks in with 1,268 copies in the Census. The top book from Eclipse is Miracleman #15, Alan Moore story, John Totleben art. This is the death of Kid Miracleman. It is probably the outside of #1, the most in-demand issue in the series. And yeah, they just Alan Moore turning and a superhero tropes upside down. So it looks like, most of what we talked about so far is either Alan Moore or Dave Totleben or the Todd McFarlane to some degree or another. Even like offshoots like the Hellblazer was based on a character that was created by Alan Moore. So this has 1,039 copies in the census. The 9th DC book is Detective Comics 583. This is the first appearance of Scarface and the Ventriloquist. John Wagner and Alan Grant did the story. Norm Breyfogle and Kim DeMolder did the art, and Mike Mignola did the cover. Yeah, just a villain first appearance. He was very widely used in the Batman animated series. It has 1,020 copies in the census. I'm going to talk about another Marvel book because of recent news surrounding this. This is Web of Spider-Man number 36. This is the first appearance of Tombstone. Tombstone has been cast. Marvin Jones III will be portraying him in the Spider-Man Brand New Day series. This is one of the few more popular Spider-Man villains to premiere outside of Amazing. Usually you don't get that many in Spectacular or Web, but here we go. Jerry Conway did the story. Alex Saviuk and Keith Williams did the cover and the art. This has 995 copies in the census. The top book from Blackthorn is Planet Comics number 1. Dave Stevens cover. Blackthorn had done a lot of the 3D issues, but they also got some Dave Stevens work in here, and that really... we've talked before, the documentary about Stevens has really propelled the books that he did the covers of into popularity, especially the ones with good girl art, like this one. 758 copies on the census. The 10th DC book is Batman number 423, the third print. We can see here, DC Comics aren't just for kids, is like what separates that from the first print. And the second print is... has where is it? No, second print. No, it says the same thing. So the second and third prints, you have to look inside to determine the difference of whether or not it's a second print or a third print. Right? DC Comics aren't just for kids. So there's more third prints than second prints in the population report. This has 665. The top book from Nintendo of America is Nintendo Power number 1. This is a magazine. It's a free sample copy. So yeah, this ran for 285 issues, Nintendo Power. And we saw it with Blip. The popularity, especially of Mario, has just maintained for 40 years. There are 641 copies in the census. The top book for Mirage. We did get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures from Archie. We still have the original run from Mirage, which is more adult-oriented. And this is issue number 1, 5th print by Eastman and Laird. Different cover, 598 copies on the population report. The top book from New England Comics is The Tick Special Edition, number 1 by Ben Edlund. This is the first full comic book appearance of the Tick. Previously, he was kind of in that catalog or magazine that promoted New England Comics, which was a series of comic book stores in New England. But here, they finally just producing their own comics with this character. There have been TV shows about the Tick. We talked about him in a previous episode. 573 copies on the Pop Report. We are going to go to the next book. This is the top book from Now Comics. And this is Terminator number 1. The Now run of Terminator ran for 17 issues. And this is, of course, based on the 1984 film directed, much like Aliens, by James Cameron, the Academy Award winner for Titanic. That film starred Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton and set in motion an entire franchise. There's very shortly after this a Dark Horse series, but this is the original series, the first appearance. Now Comics, 372 copies on the census. Top book from Kumiko is Rocketeer Adventure Magazine number 1, all by Dave Stevens. Stevens' popularity, there would be the Rocketeer movie that would come out a few years later. This has 245 copies on the census. The next book is interesting. This is Vampirella 113. This is from Harris, their top book. This is the only Harris issue of Vampirella. It continued from number 112, which came out 6 years earlier when Warren kind of closed up shop. But Vampirella was back. Led to other series. Of course, she's still being published to this day. 219 copies on the population report. The next book on the list is the top book from Gladstone. It's Disney's DuckTales number 1. This is based on the animated series DuckTales, the TV series which ran for 4 seasons starting in 1987 for 100 episodes. Now, Gladstone largely did the Disney inventory, the Disney books from 1986 to 1990, and again 93 to 98, after, Gold Key Western had stopped publishing them. They also did EC reprints, but most of it was Disney. It was originally started with them putting together Carl Barks compendiums. They have like these magazine-sized square bounds of the reprints of the Carl Barks books. But right now they're publishing the Disney stuff, and this title ran for 13 issues. Of course, again, this is one of those things that it keys into some, sense of nostalgia for the kids that watched DuckTales growing up. This has a total of 185 copies on the Census. The next book is the top book from Caliber Press. It is Deadworld number 10, the variant cover. It's a little more, horrific, I think, than the regular cover. It's not for wussies, as it says at the top. Their words, not mine. Vincent Locke did the cover. There is interior art by James O'Barr, who created The Crow. This has 150 copies on the Census. The top book from Fantagraphics Books is Usagi Yojimbo number 10, which includes a crossover with Leonardo of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Stan Sakai and Peter Laird did the stories, the cover, and the art. So a team up between those two guys. 136 copies on the Census. The top book from Malibu is Fright number 3. This is the first cover appearance of Freddy Krueger. Now, he had appeared, I believe, in magazines prior to this. The villain of the Nightmare on Elm Street things. It is a pretty horrific cover. Now, this is from Malibu. Now, Malibu had, they kind of ran operations from 1986 to 1994. They had, like, different imprints. So Malibu is more the superheroes books. Eternity were the magazines and the anime. And this kind of came from the magazines. The licenses they had, like Planet of the Apes, were in Adventure, and the more adult stuff was Aircell. So sometimes we'll see different differentiations there among those. But this has, it says Malibu, but it has an Eternity banner. It is for mature readers. 102 copies on the Census. The top book from Deadline Publications is Deadline number 1. This is the first full appearance of Tank Girl. By Alan Martin and Jamie Hewlett. Now, Deadline ran for a long time. It ran for 71 issues. And the Tank Girl appeared. She ended up being in DC Comics for a while. And there was a 1995 film starring Lori Petty as Tank Girl. And the popularity of the characters endured. She has been... There was kind of a hiatus for a while, but she's back in publication and different things over the years. This has 86 copies on the Census. Now, the next book is really interesting. This is a bizarre one. It's a DC book. Kind of. It's Superman, no number. So what we have here, and there's 2 layers to the story. This was commissioned by a very wealthy English real estate dealer by the name of Godfrey Bradman. His son, Daniel, who is pictured here, I guess, just to the right of Superman, was this book was commissioned for Daniel's bar mitzvah when he turned 13. So the story is this island, Bradman. It's only 8 pages, so it's a very thin book. And Daniel's half brother Andrew Hunt is the blonde-headed kid on the left. And it was essentially, Kurt Swan did the art. It was essentially distributed just to the folks who attended the bar mitzvah, as, kind of a favor, a party favor. Now, here's the funny thing, right? So it's a very hard book to get, and it is very pricey. But here's the funny thing. There's a auction house in the UK. I just found a bunch of them, right? It's, what's the name? I have it here. It is Ewbank, EWBANK, auctions.co.uk. They have 47 copies of this book available in a single auction that's occurring on November 4th. So it's kind of timely that we hit this particular issue at this particular time. 35 of those are graded. Now, the highest being a 9.6. They're between 8.5 and 9.6. And then, the other 12 are raw books. And they're all, it's very weird. It's going to really, if GPA and whatnot pull in that from that website, the results, it's really going to alter the value of the book, right? So, for instance, if I go to GPA, and we don't talk about value a whole lot, but I think this is a really interesting subset of the story that is rather of the time right now, right? So if I go to GPA for Superman No Number, from 1988, there we go. So, the last sale of a 9.6 was 3,960. The last sale of a 9.4, 3,120. A 9.2, 1,620. A 9.0, 1,000. An 8.5 just sold in July for 6,500. So it sold for more than the other books. Now that is going to be definitely buyer's remorse, because if I Go Collect will talk about the total number of sales. If I can find it on Go Collect, there we go. 23 sold. 23 have been sold that have been listed on Go Collect, right? Now, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to have to bump this up, because Go Collect's numbers are different than what I'm getting from CGC data. It would only bump it up one spot, okay? So on September 16th, there were 66 copies of this book on the Census. Now there are 101. You add in the 35 that were graded for this auction. So prior to the auction, there have been 22 sales of this book, and there are going to be another 47. And there's no, I can't imagine, and I'm probably doing them a favor just by having a few more people with eyes on it. I can't imagine that the demand for this book is going to be high enough to absorb, all at the same time, 47 copies of it. I might throw my hat in the ring and throw a few dollars on it, just as a completist. I might prefer a raw copy, because I'll probably get that cheaper, right? Maybe. And most of them have off-white pages that I looked at in the auction. And it would kind of, be one of those things. Okay, even so, right, there are only about 100 graded copies. So I'm going to go with the number that CGC data. I got to look at why they haven't, been like a month since they've updated their numbers. But it's definitely changed for this book, right? Going from 66 to 101. That's a lot. That's more than a 50% increase. But it's really an interesting story. And let me know in the comments below what you think about this particular book. It is a bizarre one. I'm not sure it's worth that much money, though. Like, to me. But it'd be interesting to see how the price of this goes. We talked about 66 or 101. The next book on the list is from Adventure Comics. This is Deathhawk #2. This has a Dave Dorman cover. I think you can all see why this is popular. That is really weird. There are 61 copies on the Census. The next book on the list is very similar. This is Last of the Viking Heroes #5 by Michael Thibodeau. This title had been on the list for 1987 with a Jack Kirby cover. Kirby did not do this cover. Thibodeau did. And yeah, you can see why it's popular. 49 copies on the Census. From Comics World Corp is Comics Scene #2. Basically talking about McFarlane becoming the Spider-Man artist and having a McFarlane Spider-Man cover. Clocks in at 40 copies on the Census. Up next is Continuum, because the U has an umlaut, right? By Continuum Comics. Issue #1. There were 3 issues. 34 copies on the Census. The top book from Fantico is Gore Shriek number 4 with a Greg Capullo cover that is really disturbing. Contains disturbing material and is not intended for children. 28 copies in the census. We're going to stick with the horror vein. We're going to go to Faust, number 1 special edition by, this is North Star Publications, Act 1, Love of the Damned, by Tim Vigil. Mature stuff. 23 copies in the census. Oh, we're still staying with the mature stuff here. The top book from Last Gasp is Cherry number 6 by Larry Welts. I want it all. I want it now. I want it bad. 21 copies on the census. Okay, let's go to something that isn't completely dirty. We're going to talk about, where is it? Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future by Neil Adams for Continuity Comics. This was based on a syndicated series. It was part live action, part animation. I never heard of it. Didn't hear of any of the actors in it. Ran for 2 issues? 2 issues with Continuity Comics. There are 17 copies on the census. There's a tie for the top book from First Comics. I'm surprised they're this far down. First. It's Lone Wolf and Cub number 10 and Lone Wolf and Cub number 11. We talked at length about Lone Wolf and Cub by Kazuo Koike and Goseki Kojima, and Frank Miller doing the covers. Talked about that last week's episode. 13 copies on the census. The top book from Kitchen Sink Press is Xenozoic Tales number 7. Also 13 copies in the census. The top book from Carl Hungness is Harley Rider number 1. I don't know anything about this. I guess it's about motorcycles. There are 12 copies on the census. That ties it with the top book from Jeff Miller, which is Independent Comic Book Sampler number 2. Eastman Laird cover of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Basically, this was used to promote independent comic books, including TMNT. It did have some other, I guess, Paul Chadwick's in there, and some others, Harvey Picar, Joshua Quagmire, giggity. There are a total, and there are folks that want to collect everything Turtles, because a lot of the stuff is more difficult to find. There are 12 copies in the census. The top book from Stern and Cole Publishing is Zen Intergalactic Ninja number 2 by Steve Stern and Dan Cole. Became a video game, became popular. 11 copies on the census. The next one is interesting. It's a basically a public service comic. It is the top book from Pocan. It is AIDS News, no number. Leonard Riffus did the story, the cover, and the art. Pocan was a Seattle-based organization that stands for People of Color Against AIDS Network. So this basically, and the back cover talks about the ways to prevent the transmission of HIV and common misconceptions about it. Remember, this is 1988, right? So those of you too young to remember, there was still a lot of stigma, a lot of uncertainty surrounding HIV and AIDS. It was very lethal in the 80s when it was no idea how to treat it. Killed folks like Arthur Ashe, who had gotten it through a blood transfusion, the tennis star, and a lot of other, folks, especially in the LGBTQ community. And it was passed through sex or blood, and intravenous, using sharing intravenous needles. So it was also, since it was a marginalized group, it wasn't really paid attention to. Now, 1988, I'm an Olympic fan, right? So 1988 was when Greg Louganis of the United States won 2 gold medals in diving, and it came out subsequently. In the preliminaries of the springboard event, he hit his head on the springboard and bled into the pool, where the team doctor had to suture his head up so he could continue in the competition, which he did, and won a gold medal. Greg Louganis is homosexual, and he had a lover who I think at that point had already died of AIDS. And Greg Louganis was HIV positive. And there was a lot of, again, uncertainty. The blood in the water, could that have affected other divers? The doctor that it was, and it, it gave more those, when more awareness led to more universal precautions around it. Now, the fact of the matter is, Greg Louganis is still alive and well now, 37 years later. Magic Johnson, the basketball player, announced a retirement in 1991 that he had HIV, and he's still alive and well, and probably was at the Dodger game today. So, fortunately, it's been a disease that people can live with, or an infection that people can live with. Not everybody is fortunate enough to have the resources that Greg Louganis and Magic Johnson do, but this was very much of its time, and it was an issue that was very sensitive, and there was a lot of misinformation about it in 1988. This has, I talked about the population count, so it's an interesting book from that standpoint. There are 10 copies in the census. Let's roll through some other publishers. Where do we go next? We go to the top book from Eternity, which is Robotech II. Now, this is under the Eternity imprint, at least according to CGC, which was their anime stuff. Robotech II, The Sentinels, #1. There are 9 copies on the census. We go to the top book from Vortex, which is Black Kiss, #1 by Howard Chaykin. 7 copies on the census, or the population report. I'm sorry. Where to next? The top book from EC is Mad, #278, which has kind of this Alfred E. Newman rap on the cover. 7 copies on the population report. Top book from Fantagore is Den, #1 by Richard Corbin. 6 copies. The top book from Thoughts and Images, Albedo 13. 5 copies. The top book from Aardvark Vanaheim is Cerebus, the Aardvark #106. 4 copies. The top book from Harvey Publications is Richie Rich Relics #1. 4 copies. The top book from Harvey Picar comes out with one of these a year. It's American Splendor #13. 3 copies. The top book, there's a tie. The top books from Ripoff Press are Fat Freddy's Cat #1, the 8th print, and Fat Freddy's Cat #2, the 8th print, each of which have 3 copies in the population report. The top book from Harrier Comics is Bacchus #1 by Eddie Campbell. 2 copies. The top book from Triad is Honeymooners #5. That includes Robbie the Robot there and UFOs. There are 2 copies in the population report. Now, the next book is an interesting one. This is the Tick Ashcan edition #1. It's magazine sized. It's amateurishly stapled on the side. Basically, I guess they put together and photocopied to get the copyright, probably. Interesting thing about this, somebody recently bought a copy of this that I think Edlund had signed on the first page, so it got a blue label, but they bought it, go, okay, we can get the JSA authentication. They sent it in, had CGC, I guessing, crack it because the JSA certification has the same label number, and they sold it through Heritage where they had bought it and lost money. 2 copies on the census, and let's see, we'll wrap it up a few more. From HM Communications Heavy Metal 117, 1 copy. From Quality Comics Judge Dredd Volume 2, #14, 1 copy. And from Antarctic Press, Ninja High School #4, 1 copy on the census. That's going to do it for a very eventful 1988. Lots of books from 1988 being graded, as I said, 7 of the top 21. There's, some great Copper Age books there. Now, I am interested in what's going to happen as we get into the 90s, and get through the 90s. What books are going to be really, because, we have the burst, we have the bubble is coming, and then the bubble's going to burst. So It'll be interesting to see. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, there are plenty more going all the way back to 1934. Platinum Age stuff. Check it out. There's a whole playlist. Enjoy it. In the meanwhile, you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying, until next time, enjoy your comics.